Guys, I just got asked a question about this dude who's spending millions of dollars on himself trying not to die. And he came up in a conversation the other day. We were talking, and then there was this thing about, well, he has a program for people to do that's not millions of dollars a year. And that's like equivalent of a bodybuilder who's on thousands or tens of thousands of dollars of performance enhancing supplements or steroids, and then they're recommending a protein shake and saying this protein shake is what I use. But we all know that they don't use it. They could care less about it. I was in the professional sports realm. Everyone gets sponsors so they can continue being a professional athlete, whether it's a bodybuilder or whatever, and they can continue buying their very, very, very expensive supplements that are not the supplement that's being promoted to the mass market. And so if Homeboy's supplements that are supposed to make you live longer really worked, then that would be the only ones he used. He wouldn't need to spend millions of dollars on everything else, right? And then I'm sitting here at the beach and I'm like, Purium's literally what I've been taking for the last 7 years. I used to take tons of stuff. I used to spend thousands of dollars on natural stuff, like $300 a pound on colostrum, or $900 for a little vial of elk velvet drops. These same things that I used to buy 10 years ago, it's now $3,000 a pound for that same colostrum. I guess he's improved how he sources it. And the elk velvet drops are like something insane. Like $10,000 for that same vial. But my point is, if you see people promoting supplements, whether they own the supplement company or not, and they're very obviously on peptides, TRT, HGH, you can tell by their jaw lines, their eyebrow ridges, how big their organs stick out of their belly. There's other markers as well. But if what they were selling you worked, then they wouldn't be asking you to take it. So I got questions. Is Ra your birth name? Or am I inspired by a law of one? That's only two options there. There's other options, aren't there? So Ronald is my birth name. And I went by Ronnie most of my life. And then as I was closing down my gym, I was kind of feeling like graduating that level of existence. And so I wanted to change my name. And so I went and got assigned a spiritual name. And the deal with the spiritual name was that you have to give up your birth name. And so and this lady talked to the stars and the spirits, and she assigned me a spiritual name. And that spiritual name was Ravi Chandar. So Ravi means essence of the sun, and Chandar means moon. And so I started going by Ravi for a little bit. And I closed down my gym so I could explore sunlight, air, earth, water, ether, to study the elements, because I was realizing that being outside all day was actually true fitness. It was actually true health and wellness, and being in a gym wasn't. And yes, I read the Law of One books. They're some of my favorite books, most recommended books to other people. I read them 2012, 13-ish. If you guys are interested, definitely make sure you read the first two books. There's 5 books in the series. The first 2 are the most important. Don't just read one. The first one is about the history of the earth. The second one is about, and kind of setting the framework. So you have to read it. And the second one is about how it's all applicable to us as individuals. I'm still asking your question about the name. So going by Ravi, introducing myself as Ravi, didn't really feel well. Had to keep on explaining to people like, no, I'm not Indian. I also had like long face, like my mustache was below my chin and things. So people always thought I was Sikh or whatever. And so I was like, all right, Ravi's not going to work. And when I switched my name to Ronald, I actually on Instagram, my mom used to call my dad Ronald because his name was Ronald too, Ron. And so I didn't want to go by Ron because that's my dad's name. So my mom would call my dad Ronald. And then I just, for whatever reason, when I changed my name to, after I closed my gym, I went from Ronnie to Ronald first. And that didn't feel good. And I spelled my name RA_Nold. Ronald. And then I went to Ravi. Ravi didn't feel good. So then I was like, all right. Ronnie, Ronald, Ravi. Those are all my names. And Ra is the beginning of all of them. And so Ronnie didn't feel good. Ronald didn't feel good. Ravi didn't feel good. So I was like, all right, what about Ra? And then that's how I started going by Ra. The second part of your question was it inspired by the law of one? I mean, it wasn't. I would say that a lot of my life has been inspired by the law of one. So probably gravitated to the name Ra because of it. But it was also there for me to grab onto. So it wasn't just completely fabricated because of that book. Someone asked what this is. This is liquid sunshine, baby. Liquid sunshine. Guys, the sun is facilitating. It's a facilitator. It transmits the energy of the galaxy or the universe or God, or if this is an alien ant farm, then the power source that the extraterrestrials are using to power this video game down here. If it's a fake virtual reality matrix, then yes, the sun is the entryway. It's the portal of what is outside of us electrically coming into this earth. That's what the sun is. And in order for us to get that energy into us, it needs some sort of conduit. It needs some sort of transmitter, or what's the word I'm looking for? Translator. It needs a translator of energy because photons are non-physical and electrons, which is what our body is physical. Electrons have mass, photons doesn't. And so there are many ways that happens. In our own body, it's melanin. Melanin grabs onto the light. That's why it's dark. Dark eye pupils, dark hair, dark skin. Melanin grabs onto the light, and it translates it into us. Translates it into dreams. Translates it into vision. Translates it into physical matter. I also think water is a translation of that light, and water actually grows here because of the light, bringing in the frequency of hydrogen, and it's blending with oxygen, some of the most abundant elements in the universe. Chlorophyll is also a translator of light. It's a storer of sunlight. Plants grab onto light. Primarily, if it's green, it's grabbing onto blue and red light. That's why it's green, because it's reflecting back out what it is not holding on to. So it's actually not holding on to green, which is really weird when you think about colors, because colors aren't really what you assume they are. When you look out into nature, you're like, oh, look at all this green. It's all green. Well, actually, I just kind of contradicted myself. I'll explain myself in a second. But when you're actually looking out into the leaves are everything except for green. It's holding on to the part of the light spectrum that is not green. And what's reflecting out is green. then I started to question myself right there about like, well, why is it reflecting it out? Is it because it already is? It already has that essence? And what it's missing is the reds and the blue light. So then it actually is more green than anything else. That's why it's reflecting it out. Guys, that's a question I'm going to have to formulate an answer for. What flavor? This is apple berry flavoring. They make unflavored as well, but it's organic, plant-based flavoring. So, hello. Are you Algerian? No. Half Filipino, German, Irish, Dutch, apparently, something like that. Would like to follow you, but need to improve my English first. Hey, Ra, I love your content. I'm wearing my Rishi bun. Rishi. This is collecting sunlight, people. It's a coil of wires. What do all wires have? Insulation. Why do wires have insulation? Because the actual flow of electricity happens around the wire. Should I say it that way? Yeah, I'll just say the power of the electrical current is outside of the actual wire. It's happening around it. And when you put a turban on your head, which I don't really have partially because it matters what other people think about me, if I were to be honest. And it just doesn't match. It would cause too much questions and confusion, and that's why I don't. And I'm happy to be honest about that. But if you guys wear a turban, you'll definitely feel like more sun, whatever the sun is translating into us down here, is staying within the system. Your feelings on fruitarian. I feel heavy with cooked foods lately. That's your answer right there. It's not up to anyone else to decide. Guys, the thing with teaching, I've been a teacher my whole entire life. My whole entire adult life, I should say. You eventually get to the point where you can't teach anymore, because all journeys are up to the person walking it. And you can be a guide, you can help somebody, but eventually your help is actually hurting their progress. And so if somebody's asking a question that already has a noticing within themselves, they already are aware, then that's more real than the answer that you can give them. Why would somebody yell at someone who wants to give a jacket to their son? Good question. Maybe because of what I just said. The son can make their own choice. Are you a partaker of Ormus, aka Mufkat, aka Mana? Yeah. I mean, I know several collectors of Ormus. And monoatomic gold is also kind of looped in there, which is pretty amazing as well. Kermit the Frog sings a song, "It's Not Easy to Be Green." Isn't life grand? Do you have an opinion on German new medicine? I have no idea what that means. Sir, reflecting green or absorbing all coloration, that is not. Does air quality affect brain fog? I noticed brain fog cleared when I left the city. Of course. I mean, it's not even air quality. It's actually particles that you can see. It's not invisible particulates. There used to be a restaurant, I think it's still there, it's called Blossom. It was a Vietnamese restaurant in downtown LA, which is right across the street from one of my gyms, the main gym. 4th and Main, I think it was on. And you used to be able to sit outside. And I remember when I first moved to downtown LA, I was at that place with my buddy, Marty, and we were eating this soup, and buses were driving by, cars were driving by, because we're sitting on the sidewalk outside. And I'm looking down at my soup, and I'm like, I don't remember putting pepper in the soup. and it wasn't pepper. And then as a bus would drive by, I would just notice like more of this black stuff just landing in my soup. And so there's so much stuff in the city that we're breathing in. It's just landing on us. We're walking in, and that's all just going into the body, and then the body has to process it, which is why nourish, detoxify, and repairing the body is going to likely improve your health in all aspects. And with improved health, you're going to have a fighting chance versus any issue that you're dealing with. Dear Ra, what's the name of the books you were talking about? They're called The Law of One books, but the first book is called The Raw Material. The Raw Material. Well, you can look them up. You could probably buy the set. The Law of One series, book 1 through 5. I honestly think book 1 through 4 is good enough. And priority, if you're going to read any of them, you have to read the first 2. You can't just read the first 1, because you're going to completely misunderstand the whole point of it. So the first one is like mostly the engineering professors, I believe they're very scientifically minded people. They were asking, she kind of was tied up, but they hooked up is the word I meant to say. They hooked up a lady to she was, I want to say tied up. She was laying on a bed in a trance, and then they hooked up 3 microphones on her, because very often 1 or 2 microphones would go out of it would break, and then they were attuning her to frequencies where they were actually finding entities that were speaking to them through her. So she was speaking and they were recording it, and then they would transcribe it. They would ask these entities questions, and one of the first entities, I forget his or its name. It was around page 30 though of the first book. So whenever I want to go find it, it's around page like 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, somewhere in there. And they asked this person who claimed, I think his name started with a K, like, I don't want to, Kairos, or it's not Chiron, something like that. But they asked this entity, hey, don't you think it's an invasion of privacy for you just to be able to watch us humans and know what we're doing, know what we're thinking? And he said, yeah, I can see from your perspective how you would perceive me knowing everything that you do as an invasion of privacy. However, from my perspective, I am you. So I'm not invading anything because I perceive you as myself. And that's one of my favorite sort of like whoa moments of that book. And then they eventually find Ra, and then the rest is them talking to Ra. And it's the same Ra as Egypt, the entity known as Ra that came down and tried giving humanity a lot of the answers back whenever Egypt happened, which is a whole Mandela effect, guys. I remember in school Egypt happening 3,500 years ago. That was the number that they taught me in school. And I know the school number is off, but now it's what the conventional mainstream narrative is, that it's 4,500 years ago, which is closer to the actual truth, which is somewhere around like 12,000 years ago. But it's crazy to me that the mainstream narrative changed, for me at least, from the reality that I came from. Your feelings on mucoid plaque. Should everyone do this cleanse? Which cleanse are you talking about? My cleanse? Go to my website, rawoferarth.com. You can get on the Ultimate Lifestyle Transformation, the ULT lifestyle. and get some of that plaque out of your bowels. You guys can also do an enema. You can also fast. There's more aggressive things that you can be doing. Back to the brain fog issue, it's also not just being in the city. There's so much things that happen when you're in the city besides just breathing in air. There's you being busier and thinking about things and interacting with more people, which then makes your brain frequencies at beta for longer, which makes it harder for you to process and harder for you to contemplate, because beta is a frequency where you're making decisions and acting, and sort of like processing, contemplation is more in like the theta range, which is, and even alpha is relaxed. And when you're living in a hustle and bustle city environment, there's less of that, and so the brain is stressed. It actually is like, if you imagine tight muscles, if you're sitting a certain way, you're going to get muscles that are tight, which makes it hard for you to express full range of motion. Or if you're always using a certain type of muscles, like if you're always pushing, eventually your chest is going to get tight and it's going to inhibit the range of motion of your shoulders. It's the same thing with your brain. If you're always in this decision, stress, threat, how do I diffuse this? If you're always in this zone, then your brain is going to get stuck or calcified. I've heard it called beta calcification, where you're just like stuck in beta. And then what? You guys all know this story, right? Because pharmaceutical, antidepressants, and anti-anxiety medication are some of the most prescribed drugs in the Western world, and you are unable to relax because you're constantly just thinking, analyzing, judging, assessing, diffusing. You're just constantly grabbing, chasing, trampling, running away from, running through, beating your head against the wall. You're just constantly in beta state, which could happen in a city. It does happen in first world countries, and we've got a rampant amount of people who are like, I just can't relax. Yeah, because you're not relaxing. You wake up in the morning, you roll over, you put your phone in your face. That phone is in your face until when you put your head on the pillow at night. And then you try to go to sleep, which means your brain has to go from high beta down into delta, passing through theta. And it's just not going to. It's because you're never in theta to begin with. So it's not going to go through that gate. It doesn't know how to. So now you're thinking you're sleeping, but you're not. You might actually sleep, but a lot of times you're literally just awake, trying to sleep all night, thinking about how do I sleep? And now you're using beta brain processing to analyze the problem of the situation, which is you cannot sleep. And then you're thinking even more. And even if you do somehow fall asleep from exhaustion, you're not actually getting deep, full rest sleep. So, guys, I just mentioned some things you can do for free, right? You can fast on your own. You can enema. You can move somewhere where you're in nature all the time, or you don't really have a lot of stress. You can put your phone down for the first hour of the day, and the last hour of the day you can watch the sunset, watch the sunrise. But if you don't want to do all of that, there's still solutions, which is what I recommend to people. It's on my website under the nutritional support tab, where we help you de-stress from an organ standpoint. The books I was talking about, the Law of One books is what I was talking about. The Law of One series, or yes, people already said that. All right. Okay, everybody. Where am I? So my house, can I see it from here? I can see no, there's trees in the way. So I can see the street, the house is on the street that I live on. And then this is, if you guys ever see me do lives where I'm like, there's a window behind me with the ocean in the background, this is the ocean that is in the background. This is Ventura Beach. The pier's over there. And guys, we're having people over at our house Saturday at 11. I'm trying to think about the time. I actually forget the time. I think it's 11 a.m. Go to my stories right now and just DM me from there, and I'll send you the address. You can come over. We're having a superfood social. What do you think of more people being diagnosed with ADHD and being prescribed meds for it? It's kind of the same thing that I was just saying. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. I just described why. The thing is that people with medications, they're not interested in why. They're not interested in the root. And so we go and we get a medication thinking that like my body was deficient in the medication. No. Does that make any logical sense to anybody that I must have been missing these chemicals that are man-made? Doubt it. Even things, guys, like vitamin D, even like natural stuff, I'm really hesitant about. Really super hesitant. I come out, it's the middle of winter time. I made an effort to come out into the sun. So I guess like, I see the convenience of using things like medication. However, I also think that we're in cycles, and medication sometimes doesn't allow for those cycles. So take vitamin D. Everyone's low in vitamin D. Yeah, I know that. And then they're like, well, in the wintertime, everybody above the Mason-Dixon line is for sure low in vitamin D. Okay, based on what? Based on what? Maybe there's processes in the body that need times of the year where there's less sunlight. Hence the reason why we're adapted to the cycles of the seasons. Is it normal for us to be living in Hawaii all year long? Or I'm sure for some people it is, but you have to figure out from your own heritage, from your own like what feels good to you, how much sunlight you need, and then just get it. And it's okay if it's less in the wintertime. Like the doctors, they're doing blood tests, and even like regenerative health practitioners, nutritionists, like even these people that are reading the blood tests and they're more aware of the holistic nature of the body, still they have their markers of like it should be in this zone. Well, does that zone fluctuate? Does it fluctuate for the menstrual cycle, the lunar cycle? Does it fluctuate for the seasons of the year? Like, are we able to go a few steps deeper, or are we just going to look at surface level things? So that's where things like, does it feel right, come to, like, we have to trust ourselves, because even the experts are working with a limited scope. Very limited, guys. We like to be under the illusion that we know everything that there is to know about the human body, about science, about the nature of reality. We're far from it. It's like, imagine 150 years ago, and those people thought the same thing. 1,000 years ago, I remember reading about some military thing that like developed like a stronger bow and arrow, and it was like mounted on the ground, and it could shoot like arrows that were like the size of like small trees, and they thought that that was the peak of military scientific achievement, and this was the weapon that was going to end all wars, because nobody would be dumb enough to fight against this all-powerful weapon that humans have never seen before. Like, there's a time in physics where the same thing, where they just said like, all right, let's wrap it up. We have no more left to learn here. And this was like 50 years ago. I forget the person and the reason for that. But guys, do not be under the fallacy that even the experts around us really know what's going on. I'll even say that I don't know what's going on. But we all each know what's best for us in the moment. Keep aware, listen to the experts, and make sure that you're not ignoring yourself. Thank your body. That's so beautiful, so cool, super social cool. Blah, 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 exactly. How to heal anxiety. I just kind of went over that. Sun is the, and I was serious. That's how you heal it. Like might get shut down for saying that word, but I just repeated the question. So apologies to the Instagram overlords of the people that watch us. But anxiety is essentially you just ruminating on the future. And so stop it. Like, get up and go for a walk. Sun is the master of medicine, path of least resistance. Why you are out in the sun? Because this is who we are. Humans. Hue, light, spectrum of light. Man, mind or manifest. We are creations of light. We are physical. We are light in physical manner, which also is Ra of earth. I am an earthling of light. I am of the light manifest into this physical being. Anxiety takes so much energy from me. Imagine the amount of energy you're going to have without it. You are going to be amazed when you detach from your anxiety. And I know it sounds so simple for me to say that, but guess what? I think it was Einstein that said, I'm butchering this, any great solution has to be simple. It's like anything great that solves a great problem has to be simple. It was said as on your side of why you are the sun. Why you are the sun. Apologies for your misunderstanding. Man, I could listen to you all day, no audiobook. Well, there's been a lot of audiobooks that's come into this noggin, and I forget them. That's the reason why I'm on here saying stuff all the time, is because I forget stuff. And so I'm like, well, I might as well record it and have it recorded somewhere so that even I can partake in listening and integrating. I even listened to stuff from like 3 to 5 years ago, and I'm just like, I don't remember saying it. I don't remember ever knowing this, but it's interesting to me. Okay, everybody. Saturday, if you're in Los Angeles to Santa Barbara area, come over. We're hanging out. Peace out. There's so many questions. I'm going to have to let you guys go.